And what we have with AI is people are learning more about how it works and that it's a database and it pulls
Yeah.
contextually, but it can't go in depth. It can't give you expertise. And so I'm seeing some return clients like come back after using AI
Yeah.
or new clients who tried AI and now want humans again. So I think we're going to see that shift in the coming months. The biggest concern I think will be less about the technology and more about the economy. The problem with platforms that are short form like Twitter is that the engagement rate, and this is whether it's Twitter or Threads or Blue Sky, is very much based on quick quips, is what I call them. And people just kind of going back and forth, and it can become hostile very quickly. People don't,
Yeah.
because you're skimming, you don't always read context. You can't add context if you're limited to 300 characters or whatever. So but I do find Threads a little bit easier to use. It still has that hostility, I guess, that I'm not a fan of, but it's a lot better conversion wise, I've noticed since X, kind of went down downhill pretty quick.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I have with me Kelsey. So Kelsey, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about this conversation?
Sure thing. So I think for this conversation, what's probably going to come up is dealing in a chaotic world and working towards, if not your dreams, and at least your goals, short-term goals, business goals, whatever that might be,
Mm.
in what they're calling uncertain times, which you've probably heard a
Uh-huh.
bazillion times since COVID. But it's very true. The world's in a state of flux, and I think we're all feeling it.
Mhm. So where has the flux taken you? I mean, in this uncertainty, how has your life been? How have you, where should we start with?
Sure. So, as starting out as a freelancer, I pretty much live in a state of flux.
Mhm.
I graduated college, moved to India, which we discussed to Pune,
Mhm.
where I started freelancing after 2 years. You couldn't work immediately because you had visas and stuff, right? There's all these legal regulations, and then I was there working with U.S. clients, European clients, trying to figure out my career path in a foreign country trying to also get a hold of a whole new culture. It was a fantastic journey. And then COVID happened, and I was also dealing with that in a foreign country apart from family. And even though I think India is very much a second home now, still. And then I came back and got divorced and changed my life entirely and started a nonprofit. While my content writing business is still going, I began juggling new roles and getting more involved and trying to be more active in influencing the world around me, even if it's a small drop in a big bucket, um, creating real positive change. And that in a world where nothing is stable right now, we've seen things about layoffs and businesses closing and technology changing. It's a wild time to be doing all of this, but I feel like it's wild even if I were in a W-2 position, and then fearing to be laid off. But the fact that that anxiety has really, if you give into the flow, that anxiety really does decrease more than I thought it would. Things I thought would have terrified me are now just one more step towards getting to where I need to be.
Yeah. So I'll pick up everything one by one, but the first thing that I want
Sure.
to talk about in this whole uncertainty and the flux that we're going through is your content writing business. You mentioned that your content writing business is doing well, good enough. So just wanted to have your perspective because there's so much AI, there's so much ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Poe, and everybody else saying that, yeah, we can write content as good as everybody else as a human writer. Now, how are you keeping yourself afloat or probably flourishing?
Right. That's an excellent question because that is, and I think everyone's feeds these days to the point where I half the time don't want to look at it. And I think, but it's an important conversation to have because it is a reality in our industry that a technology has come in, and the fact is, no one really knows how to use it, and it's being applied to everything.
Yeah.
It actually did affect my business quite a bit earlier last year. I saw a pretty steep decline in clients, or I had clients who wanted me to use AI. I
Mm.
tried a few different variations of writing specific AI, and I would usually delete like 80% of whatever the AI generated because it just was not quality information. It was not specific, especially if you write for business to business industries. So I write a lot for financial services software and content, so accounting software, payment software, things like that. It's ultra specific. And what we have with AI is people are learning more about how it works and that it's a database and it pulls
Yeah.
contextually, but it can't go in depth. It can't give you expertise. And so I'm seeing some return clients like come back after using AI
Yeah.
or new clients who tried AI and now want humans again. So I think we're going to see that shift in the coming months. The biggest concern I think will be less about the technology and more about the economy.
Uh-huh.
And we're already kind of seeing that, especially in the US right now, with everything from federal subsidies to funding getting cut to just changes in monetary policy, tariffs, for example, that are significantly impacting multiple areas of the economy. And it's creating this environment where people are afraid to spend because they may need that later or they have to be ultra
Yeah.
strategic. And of course, for each business and industry, it differs a little bit, but I think that's going to be the bigger challenge in the next year or four. So,
So that's a great perspective to have because, right, people are going back to humans because it's the human brain that's able to bring context into the whole conversation. AI
right,
just being a set of databases and information and spewing out whatever it has, just rather than giving it very specifically, right?
right. And then it's giving everyone who asks a similar query something, almost the exact same. And now it's learning, like what they're training it with is other AI generated content. So it's just creating this mess of general, I'm trying not to be like explicit, but it's just it's not relevant to what people need. And
Yeah.
it's not going to give you it may be readable, but
Yeah.
it's not nearly as useful as having an expert. So, for example, I work with a lot of financial advisors.
Mhm.
One example from that pool of clients that I have, I worked on his website, I worked on his social media, his blog content, full strategy. And it's not a whole lot of engagement if you look at like comments and things like that on social, but almost every single client comes in and says, "Oh, I saw you on social media and it looked so professional," or "I saw your content piece on this." And he's consistently grown his traffic to his website over the years,
Uh-huh.
um, because we're putting expertise first and SEO second.
Right.
Because SEO is a critical component, it can't be ignored, and that's really what, if you want to optimize for AI, like chatbots picking up your stuff, you're basically doing SEO. But because we prioritize the knowledge that he has and what he thinks is going to be important, that ends up being important, 6 months down the road when suddenly half of the population is figuring out what to do with their bonds or CDs or something else. And so that's been able to keep clients coming in for him, and as well as just being useful for his current clients who really like his newsletter, which are basically summing up a lot of the points we make in the blog.
Uh-huh. Now, coming to back to what you mentioned, right? Part of your life about living in India through the COVID pandemic. How was the experience different? Like if you'd like to share when you got in contact with your family back home and what you were doing in India, how was the environment different? Was there anything I don't know, worse off, better? If you'd like to share.
Sure. So it's very weird being back in the States because people will refer to COVID, and everything I saw in the US for COVID was either through family or through the news. Because I experienced it in India, where we did have a full lockdown. We didn't have stimulus packages. I
Mhm.
think we got like some discount on like a car loan that we had, and it was basically the amount of eggs for like a month was the amount we got taken off. It was like 200 rupees. It wasn't the same level as the US stipends. International travel was basically halted that April, that everyone realized what was going on. So I couldn't go back to visit family or, any memorials of people who had passed. The craziest thing for me was the vaccination discussions, because in India it was completely different. And you likely remember, um, I mean, Twitter, social media, like, because I was getting all the social from my location of being in Asia. It was horrific. I remember doing a lot of donations, and I know some of them might have been scams, but I'm like, at this point, it was so challenging to see so many people suffering,
Yeah.
a peop that you couldn't doubt it. So when the vaccines finally did come out in India, I was very thrilled, and to see in the US where there was this strange conspiratorial nature around it. I'm like, I
Pushback
would.
around you. Yeah.
You, you can really see the difference, and it was just so unfortunate that that's what social media was there. You can really see the differences in how it's being used and how information is transmitted. And that's not to say there weren't people who were against vaccines in India. It was just more people understood that we need the vaccination to survive and be less likely to die.
Mhm.
So it was a really weird point for me to see it from a different perspective of family and friends. Um, but highly valuable. I wish we did take a more global approach to looking at issues because I think we would all have a better understanding of the pros and cons of whatever it is, whether it's the food that you're eating or medication or school systems. I think that the isolationist approach of only looking at your own community can
Mhm.
uh, really be detrimental. And that's where marketing's kind of fun if we take it in a business context, is that you get to pull your from your experiences or from strategies across industries and kind of see what may or may not work in your industry that you're applying it to. Um, it's just I'm an interdisciplinary person. I always have been. And college was a struggle because I wanted to do just about everything.
Mhm.
So I do think that having that outlook has been really beneficial to me as well, just as a personal growth.
Uh-huh.
Um, because you can see things further out. Every emergency is no longer an emergency. 90% of the stuff can just roll off.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
gives you a lot of perspective of what's important and a lot of knowledge that you can get through challenging times, especially with community is a big thing I'm learning.
Uh-huh. Now, since you mentioned social media, I'd like to pull on that a little, that part of the conversation, because that's just what I like to do.
Mhm.
You mentioned, right, it was chaos all around, especially Twitter was chaos all around.
Oh yeah.
I guess Twitter is still chaos everywhere. I don't know for what odd reason people just come to Twitter and create chaos for no reason. They just
Mhm.
love doing that stuff. But yeah, what other okay, let's start from the business.
Mhm.
How are you using social media for business? Since you're a content writer, how
Right.
is it working out for you? Are you able to optimize your own content and not just limit it to your clients?
Right. So I'm finally getting back. One of the benefits of when you have down periods with client work is that you get to finally work on your own stuff.
Mhm.
So I've been going through and kind of re-optimizing my posts. Some of them had not been optimized since like 2018, so they needed significant edits.
Mhm.
Um, but I'd say LinkedIn is still number one for business. I'm not as happy about the quality of conversations, but a lot of that is curating your feed more and more.
Mhm.
Um, Again, AI kind of took control of a lot of people's discussions. I think, and to me, it was kind of a lot of the cart before the horse. Like you should be using AI because you'll get left behind instead of, well, what is AI? What are are there any ethical considerations? Which for me, there are
Mhm.
of using it, not just about, the plagiarism aspect and copyright, but the water usage. Um, what is it doing to our brains? Because as humans, we naturally want to go the easy way for
Yeah.
anything, right? Because we,
Yes.
especially today when we have so many things that demand our time and attention, it's so easy to go into ChatGPT and write something and just repost it and maybe tweak it a little bit even and then repost it. But then what does that do to our cognitive thinking? I think about going to the gym. I don't go to the gym nearly enough. It's something I'm very guilty of, I sit down a lot. I write all the time.
Yeah.
But, what does it do when you don't work those muscles, when you're not stretching? And it's the same thing with our brains. We don't think about it because it's not visual.
Yeah.
But there is a component of writing and asking questions and talking with other people, not machines, that develop those muscles. And so in the long term, I think it's better for me to stay away from a lot of it. Like an automation that's even not AI driven can handle like most of what I need. So there's no point to go to Gen AI when there are other affordable and less ethically
Right.
questionable solutions.
And how about personal use? Okay, you mentioned you've been using Twitter for personally.
Yeah.
Any other platform, I know that you're using, and how is it working out? What do you
Sure. So
limit? Is there anything?
I used Twitter a lot. Left it after it became X. A lot of people that I followed and admired kind of left, and then I didn't really use a similar platform. I'm not crazy about the style. I've love-hate relationship. I love the short form writing because I prefer to write than, I love taking pictures, but I'm not an Instagram person. I have an Instagram because a lot of family that I want to keep in contact with.
Yeah.
Um, but the problem with platforms that are short form like Twitter is that the engagement rate, and this is whether it's Twitter or Threads or Blue Sky, is very much based on quick quips, is what I call them. And people just kind of going back and forth, and it can become hostile very quickly. People don't,
Yeah.
all, because you're skimming, you don't always read context. You can't add context if you're limited to 300 characters or whatever. So, but I do find Threads a little bit easier to use. It still has that hostility, I guess, that I'm not a fan of, but it's a lot better conversion wise, I've noticed since X, kind of went down downhill pretty quick. Instagram, I'm really curious to see how it will develop now that it's SEO focused. A lot of the
Yeah.
descriptions and things like that have really changed it.
Mhm.
Facebook is obviously a business staple simply because a lot of people, especially the older generation, use Facebook to validate whether a business is real. Like they might find it on Google, but then it's kind of like, was it on Facebook? Because that's how you can contact sellers.
Mhm.
I would say dealing with Meta, they need to change their entire support system because it's almost unusable from the business side if anything goes wrong. But it's still pretty vital, I think, especially for the nonprofit and any kind of customer facing businesses more so than B2B.
Mhm. So we've reached the non-profit now that you mentioned it. What is it about, and can you tell me more about it?
Sure. So I actually, it wasn't, it was my idea to make it official. I met someone who was doing volunteer work the past 10 years
Mhm.
and just on his own going and volunteering. And it was absolutely amazing and everything that I think I had been missing from my life. I hadn't volunteered since high school, and it was the international component that I always thought personally I had a lot of mental blocks, I think, when I was younger, where I thought I wouldn't be helpful or wouldn't be able to do anything useful because all these problems are so big. And he was like, nope, you can just go and do it. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And so he had last worked in Ukraine, and so we got the organization fully registered so we could take donations and things like that. And then I went over there. So I went all the way to the front lines in Ukraine. And I was like, wow, you really can just kind of, like, if you're determined, you can figure it out. Like, you get a
Yeah.
ticket and there are checkpoints, but everything's, pretty straight because you're going to volunteer and help out. So there's nothing threatening or scary about it besides, maybe missiles if that gives you anxiety. I discovered I had a really high risk tolerance. And so, I went and I did it and I realized that this was really important work. So we're doing food security in Ukraine and we do disaster relief domestically. And we're kind of building out our volunteer
Mhm.
database, I would say, for that domestically and getting funding, trying to get it more consistent. And with, all the changes going on right now in the nonprofit world, that's its own challenge, but I absolutely love it. And I realized a lot of my content writing skills actually work pretty well for at least nonprofit program planning and some elementary fundraising components. There's still a lot to learn, but I wasn't as useless as I thought I'd be. So, and it's been really inspiring. The people that you meet when you do this kind of work, you just see people running towards fires to put it out. No one's sitting by the sidelines saying they can't do it. And for me, that's been really inspiring to meet the people who are either going through the stuff that they're going through or the people that are running in and putting their life or their money or their time on the line to help other people. It's fantastic.
So, how would you say, I mean, running a business and running a nonprofit, uh, how are you handling these two things separately? What's the catch?
Well, for sure. The catch is it's very easy to burn out. So I'm very lucky, however, because I work for myself. So I have that flexibility that many people don't have. I don't have to go to a boss and ask for PTO. I finish my work early and then I schedule it so that maybe I can work a little bit while I'm volunteering.
Hmm.
Uh, the biggest thing is just learning a whole new industry and a whole new way of thinking because the psychology is different with nonprofits. It's very easy when you have a product someone wants and they want to buy it, as opposed to this is something that's happening. You won't get an immediate return, but everyone will benefit. It's an emotional response, and a lot of what we do, especially with food security and things like that, it's not helping someone who just lost their house necessarily, but you're preventing a bigger disaster by making sure people don't go hungry and starve to death. And so it's helping people realize, and at the same time, we try to do it in a way that's not disrespectful to recipients of the aid, especially because a lot of them might be defenders and a lot of our volunteers are veterans. So we always try to be cognizant of not taking advantage of anyone's situation just for an emotional response. Um, and making sure everyone has dignity in the process. And so, trying to get the messaging across that this is something that benefits everyone. You're not going to get anything in return for it, in the way that you think, in the way that I'm used to with businesses, because it's so much easier to sell a product than it is to sell the concept of feeding your neighbor who you may not even see as your neighbor because they live halfway around the world. And it's not something anyone's cognizant of. It's definitely getting past a lot of mental blocks that people have because they're just overwhelmed with everything else. Especially with the economy right now, how do you ask for money when, people are struggling
Yeah.
and don't have a job or they have a house that they can barely afford? Where is the footing there? And so it's just a learning curve on my end, but I'm very lucky. I have a lot of people around me who either know more about the industry or about certain components of things I need to do. And they give the insight and support. So that's community is so important when things are when you're having growing pains, I would say, whether that's because of your own skill set needing to develop or the world changing.
Now, just a random question. If you had to share a lesson, okay, that you've picked up from your business and now you're using it in your charity, right? There's a lesson that you've been able to transform and implement. What would that lesson be for somebody who's trying to open a charity?
Right. I would say, and that's a good question. I'm trying to pinpoint one lesson that might be the most impactful. I would say knowing your own, I don't want to say limitations, but that might be the closest thing. Understanding what you can do and what you can't do at any given time
Hmm.
and what you need to delegate. So there were times where my business was so high, I had to bring on someone else either to edit or write a draft because it was just insane. And that was really hard for me to do because I'm someone who wants to, make sure everything is up to a certain quality standard, and that's harder the more people you bring in. But having that understanding of when to delegate, when to ask for help is critical for any business. And I've seen other businesses just through acquaintances, family, friends, things like that, that really struggle for a while because they're not asking for help. They're not hiring an accountant. They're not hiring a marketer. They're not getting a friend to draw a logo, for free. Um, there's no shame in asking for help because we can't do everything in the world. It's a very hard lesson that I've had to learn. But being able to know what you can and can't do as a business owner, as an individual, can help you figure out how to still get stuff done.
Right. And since you mentioned, I'm asking, you
Mhm.
were able to transfer skills from your content writing to
Sure.
your charity, right? Anything specific to?
Right. Yeah, so I think a lot of content writing actually relies, the foundation is strategy. It's a
Hmm.
lot of strategic thinking, it's a lot of research. And so, I did a lot of the marketing, like websites, social setup, everything for the nonprofit. I also did the business paperwork because I had to do that for my main business, or outsource paperwork that I felt too uncomfortable to do. So that's again asking for help. Um, and I would say the program planning was a big one that I was surprised that I was able to put together thorough descriptions of programs and the protocol and the processes and all of that based on research and personal experiences. When I went to Ukraine for the first time, for example, I wanted to document the logistics,
Right.
and I was able to come up with a plan that made sense. And then it was just filling in what where the suppliers would be in getting we give chickens to people in rural areas and smoked chickens. And the goal is to get that to orphanages and up areas near the front line that are
Hmm.
more food insecure.
Right.
But, I know nothing about chickens when I started. I had very minimal exposure to a lot of these more business or agricultural concepts. And because of my ability to research and I knew who to ask because I knew how to navigate these networks and associations just based on that's how I picked up finance writing. I knew nothing about finance until I started writing about finance.
Hmm.
Um, you're able to really create something new, and a lot of that is from those writing skills. And then I could express it in a way that I could communicate to board members and team members and continue to tweak and be open to feedback because that's critical to writing too. Not all drafts are perfect. Sometimes you have revisions and feedback, and being able to take that with grace and implement that or argue why it wouldn't work. Argue is a bad word for that, but um, be able to stress your point of why you wrote it a certain way or why you think the specific version will be the best route is also important.
All right. Now, just a last question. I don't know. Uh, what's the next thing that you're excited about in this whole uncertainty since we've been through talking about so many things in this uncertainty and the flux? What's the next thing that you're excited about in your life?
Yeah, I'm really excited. So this might be a multi-part answer too, because I keep myself busy. So I am writing a book. One thing I decided to do was kind of consolidate a lot of my knowledge about finance writing into a book, a nonfiction book to help other writers and marketers just get a feel for the industry overall, because it was a learning curve the first year or so, and also to kind of for me, it's a great way to review everything I've learned and ensure that I know a lot of the basics and revisit stuff that maybe I haven't written for a while. And so I'm excited to get that book completed. I'm hoping to release it in September.
Yeah.
I'm working on the draft now. It's mostly done, but now it's going in and filling in. The revision process takes longer. And then I'm going back to Ukraine in um, the end of September as well. So going to wrap up this year's progress and then kind of forecast for next year, which hopefully we'll have the infrastructure up.
Hmm.
A lot of awesome stuff that we're doing. And so it keeps on going. And then hopefully, um, we're finding new ways of funding. I'm doing a lot more grants, and then hopefully we'll be doing more local grants there. Um, so there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot of people doing good work, and I'm just excited to see it's just the people I'll meet over the next year from doing all of this.
Yeah, that's something I look forward to always meeting new people. So, so
Great.
yeah, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they know more about you?
Sure. So I'm basically on every social network. I talk on LinkedIn the most, and my website is kelseycopywriter.com. I have a blog there, email. I think the email is hello@kelseycopywriter.com as well. So
Okay.
very easy to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining me in on this episode. It was very nice talking to you about so many different things from business, charity, content writing, AI. And yeah, we actually managed to fit in AI into this whole conversation.
We did, yeah. I'm glad I felt like it had a proportional amount of space that it deserves. So I'm glad that we touched on it and went forward. But
Yeah.
thank you so much, Aditya, for having me on the show and the podcast. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. To the audience, if you've been listening till now, do leave a like. If you have anything to add, if you have a question or some perspective to what we discussed, do leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. So thank you so much for joining. Thanks again, Kelsey. And thank you so
Thank
much.
you.